Right now, not metaphorically, not approximately, 3.8 million parts of you are dying. You have always thought of yourself as a single thing, one body, one mind, one person looking at one screen. That belief is the most successful illusion in the history of the known universe. You are not one organism. You are 37 trillion organisms, each one enclosed in its own membrane, each one producing its own energy, each one running its own internal machinery, each one capable of independent death. And right now, while you are reading this sentence, while your eyes are moving, while your brain is processing these words, approximately 3.8 million of those organisms are dying inside you. The only reason you feel nothing is that 3.8 million new ones are being manufactured to replace them. Every second, without pause, without your permission, without your awareness. You have never been a body. You have always been a civilization. 37 trillion living things wearing one face, sharing one name, pretending to be a single entity because the alternative is too strange to survive. So what happens when that agreement breaks down? If you could shrink to the size of a cell and walk through your own body, here is what you would see. Not organs, not blood, not bone. You would see cities. Vast, incomprehensible, self-organizing cities, each cell a structure of staggering complexity, with its own power plant burning glucose into energy, its own library containing the complete blueprint of the entire human body, its own communication array sending and receiving thousands of chemical signals every second. You would see walls, the cell membrane, so thin that light passes through it, yet sophisticated enough to decide, molecule by molecule, what enters and what does not. You would see the mitochondria, hundreds of them per cell, ancient organisms that were once entirely separate life forms, absorbed into your ancestors' cells over 1 billion years ago and never released. They still carry their own DNA. They are not fully you, they are inside you. That distinction matters more than you think. If every cell in your body were the size of a human being, your body would be a structure larger than Mount Everest, and every floor, every room, every corridor would be alive, thinking in chemical language, dying and being replaced in a cycle that has not stopped since the moment you were conceived. It is the most complex, self-maintaining structure in the known universe. It is elegant, it is breathtaking, and it is exactly that elegance that should frighten you. Here is what nobody tells you about the 37 trillion cells inside you. They do not all live the same life. Right now, while you sit here feeling like one continuous, stable thing, you are simultaneously ancient and brand new, depending entirely on which part of you is being measured. The neurons in your cerebral cortex, the cells responsible for your memories, your personality, your sense of who you are almost certainly as old as you are. They formed before you were born, and in most regions of the cortex, they will never be replaced. The cells that hold the memory of your first day of school, the sound of a voice you loved, the feeling of a specific afternoon you can't quite explain. Those cells have been alive inside you for your entire life. If you are 30 years old, so are they. But the cells lining your small intestine, the surface that right now is processing everything you ate today, will be dead and replaced within 3 to 5 days. Your red blood cells, the ones carrying oxygen to your brain as you read this, will live for approximately 120 days before being destroyed in your spleen. Your liver cells, 150 days. Your skin cells, 2 to 3 weeks. Your platelets, 10 days. You are simultaneously decades old and days old. You are the same person your friends remember from 10 years ago. And you are almost entirely made of matter that did not exist inside you 12 months ago. You are a river pretending to be a stone. But that is only the surface of what is happening inside you. Because the most disturbing part is not about living cells. It is about the ones that refuse to die. In the 1960s, a cell biologist named Leonard Hayflick made a discovery that medicine did not fully want to accept. He found that human cells do not divide forever. They divide approximately 50 times, give or take, and then they stop. They hit a wall. This limit is now called the Hayflick limit, and it is written into your DNA at the end of every chromosome in structures called telomeres that shorten with each division like a burning fuse. When a cell reaches that limit, it has two options. Option 1. It triggers its own death. It activates a precise, pre-programmed self-destruction sequence called apoptosis, a word from the Greek for falling off, like leaves from a tree. The cell dismantles itself from the inside out, packaging its own remains into tidy bundles so neighboring cells can safely absorb them. No mess, no damage, no inflammation. Clean, efficient, deliberate death. What few people realize is that apoptosis is not a malfunction. It is not the body failing. Apoptosis is the most important biological function you have, second only to reproduction. The fingers you are using right now exist because of apoptosis. Embryonic hands begin as solid paddles, and the cells between your fingers kill themselves on a precise developmental schedule so that your fingers can separate. Without programmed cell death, you would have been born a featureless mass. But here is the second option, the one that is actively shortening your life right now. Some cells, when they reach the Hayflick limit, refuse both options. They stop dividing. They do not die. They enter a state called cellular senescence, and they stay there, neither alive in any functional sense nor dead, accumulating in your tissues like biological ghosts. Scientists call them zombie cells. They are not dramatic. They do not move. They just sit there, secreting a cocktail of inflammatory compounds called the senescence-associated secretory phenotype, or SASP, that slowly damages every healthy cell around them. The more zombie cells you accumulate, the more your tissue environment degrades. The more your tissue environment degrades, the faster other cells become senescent. This is not a side effect of aging. This is a leading mechanism of aging. You are not just growing older. Parts of you have already stopped, and they are poisoning the parts that haven't. Here is the question that keeps cell biologists awake at 3 in the morning. The question that has no clean answer yet. How do 37 trillion independent organisms, each one sealed inside its own membrane, each one running its own metabolic program, each one technically capable of going rogue, how do they produce a unified you? There is no central controller. Your brain does not micromanage your liver cells. There is no command structure, no master cell that issues orders, no single point from which the coordination flows. What exists instead is something stranger, a vast, overlapping web of chemical communication that scientists are still mapping. Cells signal their immediate neighbors through direct contact. They broadcast chemical messages into surrounding fluid that drift to nearby cells, a process called paracrine signaling. They release hormones that travel through your bloodstream to cells they will never physically touch, cells on the other side of your body, triggering responses in tissues that have no direct connection to the origin point. And somewhere in that web of 37 trillion conversations happening simultaneously, something like you emerges. A study published in Cell in 2021 found that individual cells display something researchers described as primitive decision-making, a capacity to respond differently to the same chemical signal depending on the cell's history, its neighbors, its current internal state. Cells, in other words, are not simply executing instructions, they are interpreting them, which raises the question that the biology alone cannot answer. If each of your 37 trillion cells is making its own decisions, receiving its own signals, running its own program, if the coordination between them is emergent rather than commanded, then where exactly are you in all of this? And if your zombie cells are slowly corrupting the communication network that creates that coordination, what happens to the you that emerges from it? We do not fully know yet. In 1951, a 31-year-old woman named Henrietta Lacks walked into Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. She had cervical cancer, and she died 8 months later. But before she died, a surgeon removed a small sample of her tumor cells without her knowledge or consent. Those cells were given to a researcher named George Gay, who had spent years trying and failing to keep human cells alive outside the body. Every sample he had worked with had died within days. Henrietta's cells did not die. They divided, and divided again, and they have not stopped dividing since. Her cells, designated HeLa, the first 2 letters of her first and last name, are still alive today. They have been alive for over 70 years. They have traveled to space on NASA missions. They were used to develop the polio vaccine. They have contributed to more than 110,000 published scientific studies. There are currently more HeLa cells alive on Earth than there were cells in Henrietta Lacks's body when she died. What made her cells immortal was the same thing that killed her. Cancer had disabled the mechanism that tells cells when to stop dividing. They became, in a biological sense, unkillable. Cells that had escaped the Hayflick limit entirely. Henrietta Lacks never consented. She never knew. She died in a segregated ward of a hospital that did not consider her future worth very much. And because of the cells that were taken from her without permission, we know almost everything we know today about how human cells live, divide, age, and die. The knowledge inside you right now has a cost that was never fully paid. Here is the question you have been carrying since the beginning of this video, even if you did not know it. If you are 37 trillion organisms, if your intestinal cells are replaced every 5 days while your cortical neurons never are, if the cells holding your oldest memories are decades old while the cells touching the air right now are weeks old, if different regions of your body are aging at different rates, dying at different rates, communicating and failing to communicate, and occasionally betraying each other, then in what exact sense are you one thing? The philosopher's version of this question is called the ship of Theseus. If you replace every plank of a ship, is it still the same ship? But the biological version is stranger, because you are not replacing yourself uniformly. You are replacing yourself in patches, at different speeds, with different cells that have different lifespans and different histories. You are not a ship being slowly restored. You are a city that has been continuously inhabited for decades. Some buildings original, some rebuilt last week, some condemned and still standing. And yet, something persists. Something that calls itself you looks at this information and recognizes itself in it. Something that began as a single cell, that divided and specialized and organized across trillions of subsequent generations of cells, that built a nervous system capable of abstracting its own existence into language and then used that language to wonder about itself. That something is you, built from things that do not know they exist, maintained by deaths you never feel, threatened by cells too stubborn to die, coordinated by a conversation so vast and so constant that no human technology has yet come close to modeling it. You are not a body that contains a life. You are 37 trillion lives that have agreed, for now, to be one. The cells inside you are not the only organisms that have been living there since before you were born. There are organisms in your gut, in your skin, that arrived before the first humans walked upright. They do not share your DNA. They predate your evolutionary line by hundreds of millions of years. And right now, they are influencing your mood, your immune system, and possibly your decisions in ways that science is only beginning to understand. That is the next video. If you made it here, you already know that Dark Anatomy does not let you leave with the same certainties you walked in with. Subscribe, because what comes next is older than you are. Keep looking inward.